Hi, I'm Sophie Edelstein, and I'm going to be recording a video on evidence-based practice, or EBP, and what I learned from talking to my nurse. So my nurse's name was Pam Strike, and she was a PNP at Nationwide Children's Hospital. She works in urgent care and is an ABP clinical lead. Once I started trying to do this assignment, I had to do a little bit of asking around, and it was kind of a difficult process to find someone I could talk to about EBP. Once I did and I found Pam, it was pretty easy from there, and I began. And I was really surprised by how well versed Pam was with EBP because she seemed to have a lot of knowledge, a lot more than me currently as we just begun the class. But I was really impressed overall with how much she knew and what she could tell me. But after we concluded our interview, I felt like there could be a little bit more. She worked at Nationwide, as I mentioned, and I feel like there could be a little bit more access to the research library on their campus more and a little bit more knowledge of it, as well as just more knowledge and access to online sources, and I felt this would just allow nurses to have a little bit more knowledge on EBP. Like I said, the interview went well, but I feel like we could have possibly talked on a deeper level, and I wasn't familiar with all the practices at Nationwide specifically, and also not knowing Pam that well and just knowing her through a friend, I felt like we could have spoken a little bit more deeply on the topic, such as talking about something like the PCOAT format in the clinical sense, but I felt like she had more of just a general understanding of EBP. And when she was talking about her specific organization's practices, she said they didn't really have anything too strict, and it was more of just a communal. Everyone kind of understands what EBP is at Nationwide, and they didn't necessarily talk about it too often or mention it in that specific context. But she stated that if she has a clinical problem, she usually goes to the education department called the Center for Clinical Excellence, where she would find an expert if she had a question she needed answering. And for her, she had a very specific mentor, someone named Kathleen Oberman, who she was unsure if she was the head of the EBP committee or if it was someone else. And when I tried to look into this, I also couldn't find the answer to who's the head of Nationwide's EBP committee. And she also said she had never visited the committee, which may have been part of the problem. And the same thing was true when speaking about nurse scientists. She said that she just had a friend who she would speak to or use a program called Anchor that I'm not really familiar with. But that's why she said she wouldn't go find a specific nurse scientist through the program, and she would probably just go through her friend. But she didn't know too much about her friend's education, so she couldn't speak too much of that, but spoke highly about her and said she was a great nurse scientist. And also, when I asked about EBP enhancers and what she knew about that, she wasn't really very clear on what that was, but said if she had a question, she would go through a program called Epic when working. And so to this, I suggested maybe using online databases for EBP resources. And she also doesn't know the Nationwide librarian, and I also couldn't find this when researching. So she said she couldn't assume that the librarian had an EBP education or too much surrounding that, but she did say that she knows that the library is open 24/7 and they always have access to that or anything else for EBP questions. And she also said once again, she liked to use Anchor for any questions she had, or maybe a mentor or a friend. She really liked this program called Anchor. I didn't know too much about it, but it seemed to be a great informative resource for EBP for her. And she also said she felt like her organization really supported EBP initiatives, even though she had never done any herself. And she said she would probably go to her section chief if she had a question or was planning on an EBP initiative. And she felt that leadership would always be very supportive of this if she had a project that she would like to do or any EBP questions or anything really regarding that. And she couldn't really provide any examples, as, like I said, she hadn't done any EBP research herself or participated in any programs or studies. But she said that her floor usually sends out newsletters and publications to support EBP. So they were very supportive, and she felt like she would be helped. Overall, she had a very positive idea of EBP at Nationwide and said it was helpful for her. Even if there could have been some more things we touched on, I think overall it went very well, and she personally uses EBP in her day-to-day life.